The morning sun cut through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vale Industries, casting long shadows across the marble lobby. Harrison Vale stood at the head of the conference table on the 42nd floor, his expression carved from stone. Before him sat 12 board members, their faces reflecting various degrees of satisfaction and concern. "The decision is final," Harrison announced, his voice devoid of emotion. 300 positions will be eliminated by the end of the quarter. Human Resources will handle the details. Rachel Kim, the head of HR, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She had worked for Harrison for 7 years and had never seen him waver on a difficult decision, but this felt different. The scale of it was unprecedented. "Mr. Vale, perhaps we could consider a phased approach," she suggested carefully. "Give people time to find alternative employment." Harrison's steel-gray eyes fixed on her. "The market waits for no one, Rachel. We either adapt now or become irrelevant. The severance packages are generous. It will have to be enough." The meeting adjourned in heavy silence. As the board members filed out, Thomas Green, Harrison's executive assistant, lingered behind. He'd been with Harrison since the beginning, watching the brilliant young entrepreneur transform into something harder, more distant. "Harrison," Thomas began, using his first name as he only did in private moments, "this is going to devastate families. Is there truly no other way?" Harrison turned toward the window, hands clasped behind his back. The city sprawled below him, like a game board, where he moved pieces with calculated precision. "There is always another way, Thomas, but not one that keeps us competitive. You know the numbers as well as I do." What Harrison did not say was that the numbers had become his entire world. After his father's sudden death when Harrison was 16, he had learned that emotions were liabilities. His mother, Margaret, had fallen apart so completely that Harrison had been forced to grow up overnight. He had built Vale Industries from nothing, channeling his pain into ambition, his fear into control. Now, at 38, he stood atop an empire worth billions, surrounded by luxury, respected by thousands, and utterly alone. Down on the 3rd floor, in a small supply closet that smelled of lemon cleaner and fresh linen, Nina Flores hummed softly as she organized her cleaning cart. She had worked the evening shift at Vale Industries for 2 years. She approached her job with the same care others might reserve for art. Nina was 29, with warm brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled, and dark hair she kept pulled back in a practical bun. She had taken this job to help pay for her younger brother David's college tuition. Their parents had passed away in a car accident 5 years ago, leaving Nina as David's guardian. Where others saw just another corporate building to clean, Nina saw opportunity for small acts of beauty. She left origami flowers on desks where she noticed someone had been working late. She made sure the break room always smelled like the vanilla candles she bought with her own money. She believed that everyone deserved to walk into a space that felt cared for. As she pushed her cart toward the executive floors, Nina heard the news rippling through the building like a cold wind. 300 people, entire departments, families without income. Her heart ached for them, but Nina had learned long ago that despair helped no one. Instead, she whispered a small prayer and continued her work, determined to make the building feel a little more human, a little less cold. That evening, as most employees had left, Nina worked her way through the executive suites. She saved Harrison's office for last. It was always empty by the time she arrived, and she appreciated the quiet space. The office was massive, decorated in shades of gray and black, with modern furniture that looked expensive but uncomfortable. As Nina dusted the bookshelves, she began humming without thinking about it. The melody was an old lullaby her mother used to sing, passed down through generations of women in her family. It spoke of stars watching over travelers, of morning always following night, of love that endures beyond sight. She did not hear the private elevator open. She did not notice Harrison step out, exhausted from another dinner meeting with investors. She simply continued her work, the melody flowing from her like water from a spring. Harrison froze in the doorway of his own office. The song pierced through him like light through darkness. He knew that melody. His mother had sung it to him every night before his father died, before everything fell apart. He had not heard it in over 20 years, had buried the memory so deep, he thought. It was gone forever. His hand gripped the doorframe as emotion surged through his carefully constructed walls. For a moment, Harrison could not breathe. He saw himself as a boy, small and frightened, his mother's voice the only thing keeping the shadows at bay. Nina turned, startled, and found herself face to face with Harrison Vale himself. She had seen him from a distance, but never this close. What struck her was not his expensive suit or commanding presence, but the raw vulnerability in his eyes. Looked like someone who had just seen a ghost. "I am sorry, Mr. Vale," Nina said quickly, pausing her music. "I did not know you were." "Here, I can come back later." That song Harrison managed, his voice rough. "Where did you learn it?" Nina blinked, surprised by the intensity of his question. "My mother taught me. It is very old, from my family." "Why do you ask?" Harrison did not answer. He could not. Instead, he turned and walked to the window, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. Behind him, Nina gathered her supplies, uncertain whether to leave or stay. "My mother sang that to me," Harrison finally said, so quietly Nina almost missed it. "A lifetime ago." Nina stood perfectly still, her cleaning cloth forgotten in her hands. She watched Harrison Vale's reflection in the window, saw the way his shoulders had lost their rigid posture, the way his head bowed slightly as if carrying an invisible weight. "It is a beautiful song," Nina said gently, her voice soft in the vast office. "My mother said it has the power to remind us of home, no matter how far we wander." Harrison turned slowly, studying this woman who had unknowingly cracked open something he had sealed shut decades ago. She was small, probably barely reaching his shoulder, with an honest face unmarked by the calculated expressions he encountered daily. Her uniform was simple and worn, but clean and pressed with obvious care. "Do you believe that?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. "That we can find our way home?" Nina tilted her head, considering his words with genuine thoughtfulness. "I believe we can find our way to peace, Mr. Vale. Whether that looks like the home we left behind or something entirely new, I cannot say. But yes, I believe the journey back to ourselves is always possible." Harrison felt something shift inside him, like ice beginning to crack under spring sun. "You speak like someone who has lost much." "My parents died 5 years ago," Nina replied simply, without the dramatic sorrow most people employed when discussing tragedy. "It taught me that we have two choices when we lose something precious. We can close ourselves off and let the loss define us, or we can honor what we had by remaining open to beauty wherever we find it." The words hung between them like a challenge Harrison had not known he needed. He gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk. "Would you sit for a moment, please?" Nina hesitated. This was highly irregular. She was the cleaning staff. He was the CEO. There were unspoken rules about such things. But something in his face, a loneliness that mirrored her own from years past, made her nod and take a seat. Harrison sat across from her, not behind his desk where power resided, but in the adjacent chair as an equal.
"Up close."
Nina noticed the fine lines around his eyes, the tension he carried in his jaw, the way his hands rested on the armrests as if he might bolt at any moment. "I fired 300 people today," Harrison said abruptly. "Excuse me, I approve their termination." Different words, same result. 300 families will struggle because I signed documents. Nina absorbed this information without flinching. "Do you believe it was necessary?" "The board thinks so. The analysts think so. The numbers certainly suggest it." Harrison rubbed his face, suddenly looking far older than his 38 years. "I've made difficult decisions before. This company has been my entire life since I was 23. But tonight, for the first time, I stood in this office and wondered what I have actually built." "What do you think you have built?" Nina asked. Harrison gestured around them. "An empire, a legacy, proof that I was worth something." "Do you feel worth something?" The question was so direct, so innocent of malice, that Harrison found himself answering with equal honesty. "No, I feel empty. Successful and completely empty." Nina was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes thoughtful. "May I tell you something, Mr. Vale? you may find it presumptuous. Please, Harrison said, leaning forward slightly. I would appreciate your perspective. I have cleaned this building for 2 years. I see the offices after everyone leaves when the masks come off. I see the family photos people keep hidden in desk drawers because appearing too attached is seen as weakness. I see the evidence of tears wiped away before morning meetings. I see the pills people take to sleep, to stay awake, to feel less. To feel more. Nina's voice remained gentle, but her words carried weight. You have built something that generates wealth, Mr. Vale, but I do not think you have built something that generates life. There is a difference. Harrison felt the words land like stones in still water, sending ripples through everything he thought he knew. You were remarkably honest for someone speaking to her employer. Nina smiled, a small, sad expression. You asked for my perspective. I assumed you wanted truth, not flattery. If I am wrong, I apologize. No, Harrison said quickly. You are not wrong. I am just unaccustomed to hearing truth. Most people tell me what they think I want to hear. That must be very lonely, Nina observed. Harrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. Loneliness is the price of success, or so I've always told. Myself? Do you believe that is true? I do not know what I believe anymore. Harrison stood and walked to the window again, the city lights spreading below like fallen stars. My father died when I was 16. Heart attack, sudden and brutal. My mother fell apart so completely that I had to become the adult overnight. I was so angry at her for breaking, for not being strong enough to hold us together, so I promised. Myself, I would never be that weak, never let emotion compromise my ability to function. Nina listened without interrupting, sensing that Harrison rarely spoke these words aloud. I built this company to prove something, Harrison continued. To prove I was not like her, that I could endure anything without falling apart. And I did. I built an empire. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being human. I became a machine that makes money. You are not a machine, Mr. Vale, Nina said quietly. Machines do not cry when they hear old lullabies. Harrison turned sharply. I did not cry. Your eyes did, Nina replied gently. Maybe not with tears, but with memory, with longing.
Ow.
With grief you have carried for over 20 years. The accuracy of her observation left Harrison speechless. He returned to his chair. Suddenly exhausted in a way sleep could not fix. How do you do it? He asked. How do you stay open after losing your parents? How do you keep believing in beauty when the world can be so cruel? Nina considered the question carefully. I have a younger brother, David. He is 23 now. In his final year of university, when our parents died, he was 18 and lost. I could have let my grief consume me, but David needed someone to show him that life continues, that joy remains possible. So every day I made a choice. I chose to notice small beauties. I chose to offer kindness even when I felt empty. I chose to believe that my parents would want me to live fully, not merely survive. It requires remarkable strength, Harrison said. No, Mr. Vale. It requires remarkable faith. Strength is about force. Faith is about trust. I trusted that if I kept showing up, kept choosing light over darkness, eventually the darkness would recede. And it did, slowly but surely. Harrison studied this woman before him, this janitor who spoke like a philosopher and carried wisdom. He had never encountered in boardrooms or business schools. I have spent 20 years choosing darkness, Nina. I am not sure I remember how to choose light. Nina leaned forward, her expression earnest. It starts with one choice. One small moment where you decide differently than you have before. Do not transform overnight. You transform in inches, in quiet decisions that accumulate over time. And if I fail, if I try to change and discover I am too far gone, then you try again, Nina said simply. Failure is not falling down, Mr. Vale. Failure is refusing to stand back up. They sat in silence for several minutes, two people from completely different worlds finding unexpected common ground in honesty and shared loneliness. Finally, Harrison spoke. Those 300 people I fired today, what if I brought them back? What if instead of cutting costs, we found different solutions? What if I actually led this company with humanity instead of spreadsheets? Nina's face brightened with genuine warmth. Then you would be choosing light, Mr. Vale. The board would fight me, the investors would revolt. I could lose everything I have built. Is what you have built worth keeping if it costs you your soul? The question hung in the air like incense, sacred and challenging, Harrison realized. He had been asking himself this very question for years, without having the courage to hear the answer. Will you come back tomorrow night? Harrison asked suddenly. To clean, of course, but also to talk. I find myself wanting to hear more of your perspective. Nina smiled, standing and gathering her supplies. I work here every evening, Mr. Vale. My perspective is not going anywhere. As she pushed her cart toward the door, Harrison called out, Nina, thank you for your honesty, for the song. Nina turned, her eyes shining with something that looked like hope. You still are human, Mr. Vale. You have just forgotten how to feel it. But memory can return. Songs can remind us. And sometimes, the smallest voices carry the most important messages. After she left, Harrison remained in his office until dawn, staring at the termination documents on his desk. For the first time in 20 years, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his choices. And in feeling them, he began to understand what it might mean to choose differently. The next morning, Harrison Vale walked into the Vale Industries boardroom with a determination that felt both terrifying and liberating. He had not slept, but for once, exhaustion came from contemplation rather than stress. The termination documents sat in a folder under his arm, but they would not be distributed. As planned, Thomas Green noticed the change immediately. Something in Harrison's bearing had shifted, like a man who had been holding his breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. Cancel the layoffs, Harrison announced, as the board members settled into their seats. The room erupted in chaos. James Morrison, a silver-haired board member whose portfolio depended heavily on Vale Industries' quarterly performance, stood abruptly. Excuse me? We spent 3 months planning this restructuring. The decision was unanimous. The decision was mine to make, and I am unmaking it, Harrison replied, his voice calm but firm. We will find alternative solutions that do not involve destroying 300 livelihoods. This is insanity, James sputtered, his face reddening. The market expects efficiency. Our competitors are cutting costs. We will be buried if we show this kind of weakness. Harrison met his gaze steadily. I am not interested in what the market expects anymore, James. I am interested in building something that matters, something that values human beings as more than expendable resources. Rachel Kim, who had spent the previous evening drafting termination letters with a heavy heart, felt tears prick her eyes. She had worked in corporate environments for 15 years and had never heard an executive speak this way. Mr. Vale, she said carefully, what you are proposing is admirable, but we need concrete alternatives. The budget shortfall is real. How do we address it without reducing headcount? Harrison opened his laptop and projected a presentation he had compiled during his sleepless night. I have been reviewing our expenses. We spend $40 million annually on executive bonuses and incentives. We spend $20 million on corporate retreats and entertainment. We lease this building at premium rates when we could purchase property and reduce long-term costs. We maintain redundant systems because various departments refuse to coordinate. He clicked through slides, showing allocation breakdowns, inefficiencies, and alternative structures. If we reduce executive compensation by 30%, eliminate unnecessary luxury expenditures, and restructure our operations with actual collaboration, we can save $60 million. That more than covers the projected savings from the layoffs. The room fell silent. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Realizing that Harrison was proposing they sacrifice their own comfort rather than sacrifice employees they would never meet. You are asking us to take personal financial hits, James said coldly. That is not how business works, Harrison. Then perhaps business needs to work differently, Harrison replied. I will be taking a 50% reduction in my own salary, effective immediately. I will eliminate my performance bonuses. I will sell the corporate jet and fly commercial. If I'm asking for sacrifice, I will lead by example. Thomas Green stared at his longtime friend and employer with something approaching awe. The Harrison Vale he knew had died somewhere in the night, and someone entirely different had emerged. This is career suicide, James warned. The shareholders will demand your resignation. The financial press will crucify you. You will be seen as weak and ineffective. Harrison smiled, and it was genuine for the first time in memory. Then I will be weak and ineffective with a clear conscience. I spent 20 years building an empire at the cost of my humanity. I am done paying that price. The vote was contentious. Several board members threatened resignation. James Morrison made good on his threat and walked out immediately. But others, particularly the younger members, who had been quietly uncomfortable with corporate culture, voted in favor of Harrison's proposal by a narrow margin. The layoffs were canceled. As the meeting adjourned, Rachel approached Harrison with visible emotion. Mr. Vale, you have no idea how many people you just saved. Not just their jobs, but their families, their dignity, their hope. I have some idea, Harrison replied quietly. And I should have had that idea 3 months ago. Rachel, I want you to assemble a task force, representatives from every department. I want to know what actually makes this company work, what frustrates people, what would make Vale Industries a place people are proud to work. And I want honest answers, not corporate platitudes. Rachel nodded, barely containing her smile. Consider it done. That evening, Nina arrived for her shift to find the building buzzing with energy. News of the reversed layoffs had spread like wildfire. Employees who had been updating their resumes that morning were now celebrating in break rooms. The atmosphere had transformed from funeral to festival as Nina pushed her cart toward the executive floors. She wondered if Harrison had actually gone through with the changes he had contemplated. She found her answer when she reached his office. Harrison stood by the window, but his posture was different, less rigid, more alive. When he turned and saw her, his face broke into a smile that transformed his entire appearance. You did it, Nina said, not needing confirmation. You chose light. I chose terror, Harrison corrected, but he was still smiling. I've enraged half my board, probably destroyed my reputation, and committed financial sacrifice that my accountant called suicidal. But yes, I chose light. Or at least I am trying to. Nina set down her supplies and approached him. How do you feel? Harrison considered the question seriously. Alive for the first time in 20 years, I feel genuinely alive. Also terrified, exhausted, and uncertain about everything. But alive. Good, Nina said warmly. Terror means you care. Exhaustion means you are working toward something real. Uncertainty means you have stopped pretending to have all the answers. They stood together by the window, looking out at a city that suddenly seemed less like a game board and more like a collection of actual human stories. I want to do more, Harrison said. Canceling the layoffs was just the beginning. I want to transform this entire company. But I do not know how. I have spent my whole career optimizing for profit. I have no idea how to optimize for humanity. Start by listening, Nina suggested. You have thousands of employees who know exactly what is broken and exactly what would fix it. But nobody has ever asked them. You have the power to ask. To actually listen. To implement changes that come from wisdom rather than spreadsheets. Harrison pulled out his phone and made a note. Rachel is assembling a task force. Department. Representatives. I want you to be part of it. Nina blinked in surprise. Mr. Vale, I am a janitor. I have no business degree, no corporate experience beyond cleaning offices. Exactly, Harrison said. You see this building from a perspective nobody else has. You notice things others miss. You understand the human element that I have spent decades ignoring. Your perspective is invaluable precisely because it is different. People will think it is strange, Nina warned. The CEO consulting with the cleaning staff. Let them think it's strange, Harrison replied. I am done making decisions based on what people think. Nina, you changed my life in one conversation. Imagine what could happen if I actually listened to everyone with your kind of wisdom. Nina felt warmth spread through her chest. Then I would. Be honored to help, Mr. Vale. Harrison, he corrected gently. Please, call me Harrison. Mr. Vale is the man I was yesterday. I am trying to become someone different. Over the following weeks, Vale Industries underwent a transformation that business analysts would write about for years. The task force met regularly, and Nina's insights proved revelatory. She pointed out that the third-floor bathroom had been broken for 8 months because nobody in facilities management actually used that floor. She noted that the cafeteria served expensive catered meals. Executives barely touched while staff brought lunches from home because cafeteria prices were too high. She observed that the company spent thousands on motivational posters about teamwork, while maintaining a competitive atmosphere that rewarded individual success over collaboration. She mentioned that parents missed their children's school, hence because meeting schedules never considered family obligations. Harrison listened to everything. He implemented flexible working hours. He subsidized cafeteria meals, created a fund for employees facing financial emergencies. He started a mentorship program pairing executives with entry-level staff. He transformed the executive floor into a collaborative workspace and moved his own office to a modest room on the 10th floor. The financial press called him naive. Competitors predicted Vail Industries would collapse within a year. Several major investors pulled their support. But something unexpected happened. Employee productivity increased dramatically. Innovation skyrocketed as people felt safe sharing ideas. Turnover dropped to nearly zero. The company began attracting top talent who were tired of soulless corporate cultures. Within 6 months, despite the reduced executive compensation and increased employee benefits, Vail Industries was more profitable than ever. But the most significant transformation was in Harrison himself. He began having lunch with employees from different departments. He learned their names, their stories, their dreams. He attended Rachel's daughter's school play, helped Thomas move into a new apartment. He volunteered at a food bank where several Vail Industries employees worked on weekends, and every evening he looked forward to Nina's arrival, to their conversations that ranged from philosophy to practical jokes, from childhood memories to dreams for the future. One evening, 3 months after their first real conversation, Harrison found Nina sitting on the floor of his office folding origami, cranes from colored paper. "What are you doing?" he asked, settling beside her. "Making wishes," Nina replied, her fingers moving with practiced grace. "In my culture, if you fold 1,000 cranes, your deepest wish comes true. I am at 743. "Are you wishing for?" Rasan asked softly. Nina looked up, and in her eyes Harrison saw something that made his heart stutter. It was the same thing he felt, but had been afraid to name. "I am wishing," Nina said carefully, "that the people who find each other in unexpected ways have the courage to admit what they have found." Harrison reached out and took her hand, paper crane forgotten. "I have found home, Nina, after 20 years of wandering in darkness. You sang a song that reminded me where I came from and showed me where I want to go. You have given me back my humanity. You've given me back myself." Tears gathered in Nina's eyes. "You gave yourself back, Harrison. I just reminded you where to look." "Will you have dinner with me?" Harrison asked, not as employer and employee, but as two people who found each other when they both needed finding. Nina smiled, radiant and sure. "Yes, I would like that very much." Outside the window, the city lights sparkled like the stars in the old lullaby, watching over travelers who had finally found their way home. And in a modest office on the 10th floor, a billionaire who had learned to see and a janitor who had taught him how sat together, folding paper cranes and building a future where profit and humanity were no longer enemies, but partners in creating something truly worth having. The empire Harrison had built still stood, but now it stood for something. And the man who ruled it had discovered that true wealth was not measured in dollars, but in moments of genuine connection, in choices made with conscience, and in the courage to transform not just companies, but oneself. The song Nina had sung continued to echo through the halls of Vail Industries, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages, and that coming home is not about returning to where you were, but about finally becoming who you were always meant to be.